Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live, talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynn@pghcitypaper.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Good morning to you. You can kiss August goodbye. It's the last day of August 2017, heading into the Labor Day weekend. So, first up today, if you don't mind, a bit of a backtrack to something I talked about yesterday and gave some incorrect information. Fake news. It's about fire ants. Those extraordinary pools of floating fire ants, probably thousands in some of them. And I said that this is something that they do. This is a survival technique, and that they simply float on some of their dead brethren and hang together. Untrue. No one's dead. No one's dead in that pile. At least that's the idea. This takes the idea of communal effort to an even more extraordinary end. What they do, I mean, they live underground. They live in tunnels underground. And when rain starts coming in the manner in which it's come to Texas, obviously they get flooded out. And what they do is grab on to each other. So they connect with their legs. So you have one ant, that's 6 legs. And you got 2 ants, that's 12 legs. And they intertwine their legs, one after another, after another, after another. And essentially, and because their bodies are somewhat waterproof, they create a woven, waterproof fabric of fire ants, all hanging on together, just going wherever the water takes them. Obviously hoping the water takes them eventually to a place that they can let go of each other and get onto a dry surface. So nobody is dead. But what about the guys on the bottom? They might be waterproof, but after a while, how the heck are they supposed to stay alive? Well, here's the thing that's so mind-blowing. They take turns. They take turns being on the bottom. I don't know how they know when time's up. All right, everybody, shift. But in that pile, there's this constant sort of motion. In the middle of these clusters, these sometimes huge clusters of fire ants, because some of these colonies are huge, is the queen. And any larvae that they've been able to save. And when they run out of their tunnels, they run carrying their offspring, or potential offspring, as much as they can. But that's just mind-blowing. So those at the bottom eventually change places with those at the top. How that's orchestrated, I cannot imagine. So that this mass of this living mass with this communal activity keeps everyone alive. Why can't we operate like that? We think we're so smart. These are ants. Although you see in times of crisis that even humans are capable of working together for a common good. And in that regard, that's the best thing I have to say about the catastrophe that has befallen the people in Texas who are so, I mean, their lives just gone, overwhelmed. But we could learn a lot from the lowly insect. By the way, if one of these colonies, one of these big floating colonies of fire ants bumps into another floating colony, well, then survival takes another form. They fight. Those two things start fighting for territory. Like, you get out of here. This is I'm floating down the river right here. You move. I can't imagine how one of those things gets on. But I was semi-correct about some of it. But and they do come. They're indigenous to Brazil, to the rainforests there. So this is an evolved survival technique that is just brilliant. So they keep moving around enough, bottom to top, so that no one succumbs. Makes me almost want to cry. Really, brings me to a heavier topic. E pluribus unum, right? That's our national motto. You know what it means? From many, or out of many, pluribus, unum, one. So this sort of foundational statement that what the United States of America is, or purports to be, or tries mightily to be throughout its history, is an ingathering of many different peoples to form one country. In that regard, it's a noble ideal. And that is the ideal that makes me so proud to be an American. Unlike some people whose pride seems to have to do with what they want to believe is our might, our power, our wealth. No, what makes us special is that foundational idea of e pluribus unum, out of many, one. So I want to talk about that a little bit today. I know there's a lot of other stuff happening, but this is what's in my head. We need to be more like fire ants. The good part of fire ants, this coming together. Because ultimately that kind of interlocking of individuals creates a strength, a survival that is awesome. E pluribus unum. I want to talk about what I think has happened to the Democratic Party that has gotten us to where we are, which is a minority party controlling none of the apparatus of the government. That's true in most states. It's true of the federal government. The Republican Party owns the Congress, owns the executive, owns the Supreme Court. And we Democrats clearly have done something wrong. especially given the fact that the Republicans seem to have been committing, trying desperately to commit suicide for the last 20 years. And yet, they control the government. So what's wrong with the Democrats? Well, I think we can start with e pluribus unum. Because my sense, and my pride also in identifying with the Democratic Party back in the day, is that the Democrats, certainly more than the Republicans, exhibited that national motto, e pluribus unum. We were the big tent party. If you look at us, you see a picture of America. You see all colors, all races, all ethnic groups, gender groups, all that stuff. A whole wonderful stew. And they come together and create this Democratic Party. E pluribus unum. But what's happened is far too many people, usually identifying with the Democratic Party, have gone astray, I would say, out of the best of intentions, I would hasten to add. But it's time to look at the consequences. Because what has happened to the Democratic Party and is happening to the United States is the exact opposite of e pluribus unum. Instead of out of many, one, we're now taking the one and creating the many. We're pulling apart that one and saying that this is a group, and this is a group, and this is a discrete group that speaks for itself, and damn, you better not, if you don't belong to it, speak about it or for it. This is what is called identity politics. Right? Identity politics, again, well-intentioned, bring marginalized people who belong to groups that are not the majority group, bring the marginalized, the lesser group up, define them out so that we see them, so that they have power, so they speak. Fine, good, all good. But if in so doing it goes off on where it's gone, which is into this political correctness from hell, cultural appropriation, where a white artist cannot paint a black person, where a white author cannot write a novel set in Africa, where I guess a male author cannot have a woman as his central character. What right is he? What does he know about being a woman? And there are bright people who will argue to the death about this stuff. But I just want to say, can we look at what it's wrought? We're at each other's throats. Even people who are natural allies are at each other's throats over these kinds of things that, yes, should be talked about, but should never endanger the whole. The unum. The unum is stronger than the pluribus. Those mass of fire ants are going to survive. Individual fire ants, they're toast. I don't understand what's so hard about understanding that we've made a wrong turn, and that in doing so, we have turned off a lot of people who would be our natural allies. Lefties, Democrats, they're just incapable of preventing themselves from doing this, it seems. And it's always, as I said, out of the best of intentions. I'm looking at the results, and it's ugly. And at times it gets into absolute silliness. I need everybody to start thinking about how coming together is where we need to go. And that's such a difficult idea for us now because we've been schooled in the last decade or so to think in terms of personal grievance. And that kind of thing just separates people out. I'm more persecuted than you. I'm more marginalized than you. How dare you talk about my condition, my history? Who are you to suggest you have a clue about me? God. So, Milton sent me something I'd missed the other day. And this is a piece written by a Pittsburgher who now writes opinion for the New York Times. She's a young woman. I have the pleasure of knowing her and her family. Her name is Barry Weiss. And she has, for a long time, been saying what I'm saying now. She's been pointedly ridiculing the excess of the left, how it devolves into absurdity. So I could have written what she wrote. I want to thank Milton for sending it because I would have missed it. She's a smart cookie, and I went to her site, her Twitter site, and she, of course, is being ripped limb from limb for what I'm about to share with you. Limb from limb by good leftist types, Democrats, liberals. Oh, tolerant liberals who now won't tolerate so many things that the mind begins to explode. What's going on now with this bunch in the camp I like to belong to is there are times when they almost make me so crazy that I want to leave. You want to know why Trump's in the White House? All right, here's some of what Barry said. I haven't watched MTV's annual Video Music Awards since Bill Clinton was president. I was wearing a plastic choker and Alanis Morissette won for Ironic. But I wish I had tuned in this Sunday night. The award show was a veritable orgy. Not of sex, but of cultural appropriation. First up was Kendrick Lamar, whose backup dancers wore ninja outfits as they scaled a wall of fire. While the popular rapper went home with an armload of trophies, he was criticized for borrowing Asian dress. Later, Katy Perry, who just recently finished an apology tour for her previous sins of cornrows and kimonos, took off her long blonde wig, a bit that was torn apart for caricaturing African American women. Luckily for Ms. Perry, the floodlights lingered longer on her nemesis, Taylor Swift, who unveiled a new video that was immediately blasted for appropriating Beyoncé's Lemonade. And speaking of Queen Bee, I'm just waiting for the charge that she's exploiting Persian culture by naming her new daughter Rumi after the 13th century Sufi poet. And that's just the rap sheet from a single night in pop music. Charges of cultural appropriation are being hurled at every corner of American life. At the art museum, at restaurants, movie theaters, fashion shows, novels, and especially, God knows, the college campus. Barry says, if there's a safe place yet, I am not aware of it. So she explains the logic of those who are behind all this goes something like this. Stealing is bad. It's especially terrible when those doing the stealing are rich, as in they come from a dominant racial group or religious group, cultural or ethnic group. They are the dominant group. And if they take anything from a group that is perhaps less represented in the halls of power, they are then stealing. And she says, of course, few of us would doubt that stealing is wrong, especially from the poor. But the accusation of cultural appropriation is overwhelmingly being used as an objection to syncretism. Good God. You know that word? Me either. Which is, she knows we wouldn't know it, so then she defines it, which is it's being used as an objection to the mixing of different thoughts, different religions, cultures, and ethnicities that often end up creating entirely new ones. In other words, the most natural process imaginable in a country like ours. Again, I give you pluribus unum. She says the Reverend Dr. King delivered some of the most sublime speeches of the 20th century. In them, he used a mostly Latinate language to evoke the trials of the Israelites while quoting the writings of a slave-owning founding father. Irving Berlin, the songwriter who wrote White Christmas and God Bless America, was a Jew born in a Russian ghetto in a home with a dirt floor. Jesse Norman, one of the greatest opera singers of our time, is a black Southerner who is famous for her Wagner repertoire. The point is that everything great and iconic about our country comes when seemingly disparate parts are blended together in revelatory ways. And that merging simply doesn't happen in places where people are separated by race and ethnicity and class. And it's not only what makes American culture so rich, but it is also a big part of the reason America is so successful. When we see a good idea, we steal it. When we have a good idea, the rest of the world is welcome to it as well. More than half of the countries of the world now have some form of democracy, a system of government we enjoy and have proselytized. But it was invented by the Greeks. We appropriated it. Britain beat us in the abolition of slavery Finland gave women the vote before we did. Eventually, we got smart and borrowed these egalitarian innovations. In 1989, Tiananmen Square, those brave Chinese young people yearning for a freedom they could only imagine erected a homemade Statue of Liberty. But let's remember, Lady Liberty, who we think of as ours, was made in France and given to us by the French. So, I mean, anybody disagreeing with anything she's saying? I don't see how you can. But then go read the comments from the politically correct, the people who now are just all about tearing us apart. If they have their way, we're going to end up segregated in ways we've never been segregated. Segregated by religion, by race, ethnicity, gender. This is something that the left has created, and we have got to stop it. It's killing the Democratic Party. It's killing it. Portland, Oregon activists recently created a list of white-owned appropriative restaurants. And that's so good-minded people who are for the underdog could not go to any of those restaurants owned by white people, which is to say any white person owning a restaurant that serves Taiwanese food can't go. And this is beyond belief, but I'll believe it because my brother teaches there and he's been telling me about. You remember when my brother was like a right-winger? He turned to right-winger maybe about 15, 20 years ago. He's back. Sarah Palin brought him back. You know what he was reacting to? This, at the University of Michigan. He saw it before it got so big. And he so was repelled by what he was seeing that he went to the other side. That's what happens. He didn't want to stand unum with the Democrats, the liberals anymore, because he thought they'd lost their cotton-picking minds with the best of intentions. So this summer, the University of Michigan posted a job for a bias response team employee. A bias response team. And what's the job? The job is to enact cultural appropriation prevention initiatives. God. They're going to go after the algebra department for, appropriating algebra from the Arabs? So, it's so easy to make fun of this shit. It is. She continues, if this insidiously exclusionary view of culture goes the distance, it will take us back to a separate but equal reality that this country has spent the last half century clawing our way out of or attempting to. You can already see the beginnings of it. There are now racially separate commencements at schools like Harvard, so that the black Harvard grads hold their own commencement. And those who do this argue that it's an important way to affirm group solidarity. But you see, the groups are getting smaller. We need that big one that encompasses all of us, rich and poor, black and white and everything in between, or we're doomed. Barry says, consider the simple act of eating a meal in an era of cultural purity. This weekend, she has said, I had dinner in Brooklyn, cooked by a Palestinian who was raised in Israel, where her brother served in the parliament there. Yet her restaurant is billed as Lebanese, and she accents her traditional dishes with cilantro, basil that would never be found on a plate in Lebanon. But if proponents of cultural purity had their way, I'd have spent the evening cordoned on the Upper West Side watching Yentl and eating gefilte fish, because that's what a Jew does. It doesn't help, she says, that at the very moment that white supremacists in this country are reviving the Nazi era ideals about the purity of blood, the left is treating culture as something almost as immutable. Two can play at this dangerous game. You can come at it from that side, or you can come at it from this side. Indeed, the left's insistence on cultural partition makes nobody happier than the Nazis, than Richard Spencer and his fellow travelers on the alt-right, who are expert at mimicking the left's identity politics to give voice to their twisted ideas of national and racial segregation. Americans should think very carefully before engaging with a politics that bears an eerie similarity to the people that marched in Charlottesville with the tiki torches. They were all about group identity. And she finishes by saying, none of this means that all cultural appropriation should be cheered. Sometimes it's just plain old bad taste. But so long as the impulse is one of homage, I love that. I'm going to do that. I love that. I'm going to wear that. As long as the impulse is one of homage and not derision, we should encourage borrowing. Culture should be shared, not hoarded. And she says, when I will inevitably get called a racist for cheering this kind of thing, I might, well, you know what? And she did. The fact that she said that, I went to see what the comments were. They just ripped her apart limb from limb. Never with any, just ripped her apart. Attacked her. I've said it before. I don't care if it comes from the right or the left. Nobody tells me what I can say. Nobody tells me what I can wear. Nobody tells me that words in my vocabulary are verboten. We got to stop it. It's getting crazy. It's getting crazy. And it's pulling us apart. E pluribus unum. Here's one good comment. Being non-white and not born in this country, but a citizen of it, I am enthusiastically for cultural appropriation. However, what I find repulsive is cultural misappropriation. And there is a big difference. Well, fine. But it ain't a crime So what Barry said is in bad taste, maybe. Anyway, that's Barry Weiss. Smart cookie. If you ask me. And nobody did. Let's see, what do we got here? Kurt. I'm a white man. My husband is black. When we had a commitment ceremony in June of 2000, his father brought his signature ribs for the reception, and my Slovak mom made halupki, cabbage rolls. Our minister was a black reverend from a metaphysical church, and there was a reading by my Carmelite nun aunt. I'm pretty sure at least some of the music we played was heterosexual composers and performers. Oh, the sins of appropriation we unwittingly committed that day. Well, see, what I understand, though, is that if you're in a minority group, which you obviously are, you're gay, your husband's black, that gives you privilege to, I think, appropriate. See, white people can't have their stuff appropriated because they're the big shots. They're the big guys. Where people get so enraged is when white people take something from a minority culture. But guys, welcome to the world! Jesus! Welcome to the beginning of time! Welcome! It's how we progressed. Somebody saw somebody else doing something that was smarter, that made sense, that was beautiful, and they wanted it. Of course they did. We were moving forward from the caveman on. Nobody asked, are you part of a special group? No, you said, wow. So the guy who figured out the wheel, maybe he was from a little tribe somewhere. And the big tribe took that damn wheel. Was that cultural appropriation? And if so, where would mankind be without it? I have to tell you, I don't understand it. And I have been a lifelong liberal, and I've had it up to with this shit. I've had it. And when I try to listen to the people who are explaining it, what I generally am hearing is from a young person full of the fervor of wanting to make the world better. I see myself, my old self in them. But that kind of fervor is often based in, hello, it's not doable. I saw one person who said, we just want things to be fair. What's wrong with that? We just want things to be fair. Well, yeah, me too. Me too. If you can figure out how to make things fair, well then, my God, the world will carry you on its shoulders from now until the end of time. How to make things fair. Well, you don't do it with this kind of nonsense. You do not. You can awaken people to the position of less powerful groups and attempt to raise them up. But there's no getting away from simple mathematics, okay? Some are bigger, some are stronger. My God. I'm from a small group. Yes, I'm white, but I'm a Jew. And there's not a smaller international group than the Jews. We are a small tribe. That's all we are, is little people. So technically, I mean, I want my bagel back. Give it back. All those Yiddish words you guys use and you don't even know they're Yiddish words. Come on! Okay, I'll stop. But I really think that this is such a danger, such misplaced energy, and yielding not what it wants, but in fact further dividing us. If that's what you want, if you want to take out of many one and instead turn it on its head, out of one many, because that's what this crowd's doing. And it's coming from our side. Out of one, many. And then you see even groups, little groups that have been pulled out, they start fighting amongst themselves because there's some kind of a, well, you didn't acknowledge this, that, the other. It gets so insane that I'm done. I just can't. I can't take it anymore. I really can't. And it makes me leave the fold. If these well-meaning liberals, lefties, whatever they are trying to gain more influence and power, man, are they barking up the wrong tree. They are making people like me who have been in it since day one, on the good side, I think, the good side. And they're making me not want to stand with them, not want to be associated with them. They're dividing us. And I want to punch their lights out. I really do. I've had it. So, there's an incredible story in the sports page today. And I always get the impression that you guys aren't sports fans, but I don't know. And tough, I am. And less so than I used to be. And in terms of football, much less so. But that's what I want to talk about. There's a story. I don't know if it's getting a lot of media or not. But those of you who are like NCAA football fans, you'll know the name Ed Cunningham. Maybe even just football fans in general, because he was a pro player. And since he left the pros, he has been a color analyst for ESPN and ABC. So he has, for decades now, been the voice that people are hearing when they're watching these football games. He's 48 years old. He was the captain of the national championship team, Washington, in 1991. He's played with some of the best, without a doubt. He knows the game. It's been his life. 48 years old. He quit his job. He just quit his job. It's a good job. He admits it. He gets paid some six figures, he says, for not doing much of anything. I know the game. I go, I say what's happening, and I get these huge paychecks. Been doing it for a long time. So he left one of the top jobs in sports broadcasting because he says he can no longer be party to it. He says it felt wrong to be a collaborator, essentially, a close witness to the carnage. It felt wrong to be profiting personally from a sport that he knows is killing people. He knows some of the people are dead. He played against them. He talks about them. 3 players that he played against in the NFL committed suicide, all because they had traumatic brain injury. 2 of whom made a point of killing themselves by shooting themselves in the chest so that they would not ruin their brains, because they wanted their diseased brains to be able to be used for research. He said, how am I supposed to keep making money off a game that we now know can turn 40-year-old men into walking vegetables? He said, I can't do it anymore. I can't come back from the commercial break, and that guy with the kid with the broken leg has been carted off, and it's just 3rd and 8, and on we go. Can't do it anymore. Hey, this has been bugging him for a long time, and he finally, this is a good man. This is an ethical man. This is a man who is an example to be followed. So, of course, the New York Times goes and asks Al Michaels, who's, God knows, he's a gazillionaire because of this game. And Al Michaels says this: I don't feel, a little defensive here, I don't feel that my being part of covering the NFL is perpetuating danger. If it's not me, somebody else is going to do it. Al, that is as lame an excuse. You can see like I want you to go shoot all these people here. Okay. No, I refuse to shoot all those people here. Okay, fine, go away. We'll get someone else to do it. Okay, well then, if you're going to get someone else to do it, I guess I could do it anyway. I'll do it. Al Michaels, there are too many good things about football, he said. Too many things I enjoy. I can understand maybe somebody feeling the way he does, but I'd be hard-pressed to find somebody else in my business that would make that decision. Right, because it's hard to be an ethical person. It's hard to walk away from money. But Ed Cunningham, what the hell? Huh?
Sorry, it's Rodney. I can't do it.
Rodney, shut up! Well, that hadn't happened before. Okay, so Ed Cunningham says this. Excuse me. Announcers are part of the industrial complex of college football. And I think we've turned a blind eye to the violence. We have to protect these kids. So he's doing mostly, college football. They are kids. And he watches them keep kids in games when they obviously need to be pulled out. He just couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't do it. What finished him off, I guess, was a bowl game last December. He said a bowl game that meant nothing, an Outback Bowl where the quarterback, an Iowa quarterback, was kept in, even though it was a blowout and he had been taking hits left and right. And he's watching it. He's part of the thing that's doing this as pure entertainment. And he couldn't sleep for days and days and days at being party to it. It's tough to let go of something you love. I know, as I was born and raised in Green Bay, Wisconsin, for God's sakes, where, you eat, drink, and pray football. But see, we now know it's killing people. Those guys on the field, I don't know what percentage of them are going to die from it or be vegetables from it, but we do know now. And we can't pretend we don't. So Ed Cunningham says he loves the game, but he doesn't want to, it can't continue as it is. And I agree, it can't. It's going to go away. The NFL's in denial about it. Their ratings are down across the board. Across the board. And if you think some of that isn't because of this, you're crazy. I'm one of the people who ain't watching anymore. Except, I must admit, I still can be drawn in at the end when the consequences are, because it's an exciting game. Well, I ain't where this guy is. I wonder if he'll watch it ever. So he thinks the NFL's just got to do something, like have rules like a player may participate only in a certain number of plays per game, things like a pitch count in baseball, or he said the helmets have to change. Maybe there can be sensors inside them. Maybe there can be changes to the exterior of the helmets. Don't make them hard so that they are weapons. Make them like out of foam or something, something like memory foam, like Nerf helmets, right? And reduce the weight of them and their ability to be used essentially as weapons. I don't know. I'd say that is a profile in true courage. Ed Cunningham. You won't be hearing his voice anymore. Okay, hang on. Laura writes, I also am so tired of all this appropriation shit. People just need to get a life. And she's writing from the University of Michigan. I bet you're tired of it. People just need to get a life and move on. It's life, says Laura. Duh. Life. God knows it ain't fair. Just turn on the TV and look at Houston, would you? It ain't fair. I'm frankly tired, she says, of a lot of this crap people are yammering on about, so get over it. By the way, glad you're back. Beth says, I love sports as well. Helps in not thinking about everything else that's going on. Well, that's true. It's a way to get away. But if now we know. Okay. So Fox News did a poll. Fox News. And they reported this poll. Fox News poll. 56% of Americans say Donald Trump is pulling America apart. Tearing it apart. Fox News did the poll, and Fox News reported the result that 56%, that's a healthy majority, of Americans think Donald Trump is tearing this nation apart. Something that should worry Republicans is the majority of independents, the people who decide national elections. They agree. 53% of independents say he's tearing this nation apart. Dr. Martin Luther King has been referenced already today, but he gave a commencement address at Oberlin College in 1965. And in it, he said that, I'm going to paraphrase, that, we gotta learn to live together. We've got to learn to live together, or we will perish together. So, America is at a real crossroads now. And we need the best of us, anyone with any leadership skills, to step up. Step up. Speaking of people stepping up, God bless him, Robert Mueller. He's figured he must, I bet Donald Trump's head's exploding. So Mueller has, when Trump, I didn't talk about this, but when Trump pardoned Arpaio, everybody quickly said, and clearly, he was showing the power the president has. And he was saying to all his terrified minions who might be being investigated by Mueller, I got your back. I take care of my friends. I'll pardon you. Just don't worry about this. So a lot of people saying the Arpaio pardon was really a way for Trump to signal people, don't panic, don't snitch, don't talk. I got your back. So Mueller lets it be known that he is now working with the Attorney General of the state of New York, who has also been looking into a lot of the wheelings and dealings of the Trump family and the Kushner family. And he made clear that what they can do is bring state charges. So this Attorney General Schneiderman, I believe his name is, in New York State, can indict Trump, his family, Kushner, Manafort, all of them. And guess what? The President of the United States does not have the power to pardon anybody at the state level. So, we don't have to bring federal charges to get them. You can bring state charges to get them, and the president cannot pardon them. Ray writes, will the Trib podcast have an audio feed? I don't know. I can't answer that yet. So we won't have YouTube tying up the device? I don't know. We'll find out. Kathleen says, Dear Lynn, of course what you are saying and quoting is exactly accurate. The missing element, I think, is that all of this talk of cultural appropriation is happening in a vacuum. It's intellectual masturbation. Every day I'm confronted in the blighted inner city where I live, Steubenville, with people who are living without hope. Most of them are here because they can't get away. They have no jobs, zero education, no hope. They live with a plague of bed bugs, expensive housing costs, and no representation in any form. There are no political parties, no churches, no charitable agencies where they are. There are other people in the city who are not in this condition. Most of them are Democrats, but the liberal, socially progressive, politically astute people never see these blighted ones. This is the problem. Steubenville's just a tiny sampling of this problem. Yeah, you're right. A lot of this cultural appropriation stuff and the politically correct stuff that happens on college campuses is happening by it's the output of a very privileged minority, right? Students at some of the best universities in this country. Kathleen goes on to say, in my lifetime, Democrats seem to be about lifting up the poor, about instituting social reform, creating jobs. This is no longer true. Until the liberal, socially inclusive Democrats begin to engage the real crisis, there will be no beginning. And that crisis is, yes, jobs, health care. It is not about cornrows and cultural appropriation, nor is it about statues. Keep your eye on what's important. Excuse me, I interrupted Kathleen's rant with my own. The lives of the poor, she says, the undocumented immigrants and the unemployed are the stuff that the Democratic Party was built on. Until they begin representing these people, they will be a gaggle of almost elites who run around like squawking geese, speaking only to each other as the real insults to the people of this country go unaddressed. I truly detest this social intellectual blather. Couldn't have said it better. Couldn't have said it better. Okay, my God, I've gone 2 minutes over. Okay, so we're out of here. As to, what the show will be once it moves out to Trib Live, I don't know, but I'm sure they know what they're doing, okay? They've been doing it for years, and it's easily accessible, so I don't have a clue. It can't be as messed up as what we've endured for, I don't know how many years, forever, okay? So have a good day, and see you tomorrow.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.